the Swedish gentleman is telling my contact that there's this crazy US guy that'll pay any amount, well over $1 million, because he knows what he has. He has the prototype SE30. And I laughed and I said, I'm probably that crazy US guy. So if you've been following my personal journey and the story of Curated, you know that one of the most special cars in our hearts is the Diablo SE30. Essentially, Lamborghini's F40. It's really the first purpose-built car from Lamborghini in many ways. You're talking about a car that was, designed for racing. It was built as a lightweight special edition to celebrate the car's 30th anniversary, the company's 30th anniversary. And when you look at an SE30, you just realize just how much different it is from a normal Diablo. Almost every component of the car is completely different. So I adore the cars. I think it speaks to the future of where Lamborghini went. You think of all the race-inspired Lamborghinis today, it is because of the SE30. About 6 or 7 years ago, a former Lamborghini employee sent me a message, and he said, I know you love SE30s. I know where the SE30 prototype is. And I said, how do you know that? And he says, well, if you look at photos of an SE30 and you ever see a car at an auto show or you see a car in a magazine and you notice that the gas cap is gold and you notice that the small little side window is like angled, it's the prototype. I was like, really? So I went back to all my notes and files and magazines and all these different things. And I started noticing there was an SE30 in all of the old events and all these things that always looked different, and it was the prototype car. Now, what's so interesting is this car, if you read all of the old press material and you read actually the company's first yearbook announcement of the SE30, this actual car was supposed to be kept by Automobili Lamborghini. It was actually advertised as being 000 part P0, and it was part of the company's museum, and it was a big deal, and they described it as a very important car for the 30th anniversary. And at some point in 1997 or 1998, while Stefan Rotell was working with Lamborghini, and if you don't know this about Stefan Rotell, at the time, he was in charge of the FIA BPR GT Championship for Europe. So a very, very important person in racing, but he was also in charge of and partnered with Lamborghini on their SVR series. So at the time, they had a great relationship with him, and I don't know if they actually owed him money or not, but the whole scenario, but he was able to buy this car as the first owner from the factory in 1997 or 1998. I've spoken to his team a few times. They're an incredible organization, and they basically said that he loved that car. He drove it very, very fast. There's a few times where I think he got some big speeding tickets, and he enjoyed it for many, many years, and then it ended up in all places but Sweden. And this is where this gentleman that formerly worked for Lamborghini said, listen, I've noticed the car at this showroom. It was in Sweden, and somehow it's still in Sweden. Look for Sweden for this SE30 prototype. It's funny, when I started going back into the Lamborghini yearbooks and these magazines, I started noticing that the car didn't just have the gold fuel cap and the little different window. It had a lot of different features. When you sort of look at the interior of an SE30, you can see the whole interior is carbon fiber. Carbon fiber door panels, carbon fiber center console, and then obviously the Alcantara dash and things like that. What was interesting that I noticed on the SE30 prototype is the door panels were completely different. The center console was completely different, and it had a bunch of little weird features that the production cars never got. Also, looking at the car, the wing looked a touch different. There were a few other things that I noticed were uniquely different. I'm about to unveil a little secret about cars in Sweden, but all cars registered in Sweden are actually public. It's a public registration. You could look up a car and you could actually find the owner. It's not going to give you a cell phone number, but you could find a name. So fairly quickly, I was able to find the owner. I used some Swedish contacts to reach out and never got anywhere. I just kept hitting roadblocks, but I knew the car had existed in this area of Sweden. Now, ironically, my wife is from Sweden, and I know a little bit about Swedish culture, and I know a lot of people in Sweden thanks to her. I kept reaching out, making different contacts. I even thought about trying to visit it and door knock it at one point. And then one day, about 2 years ago, I get the most interesting message. It's from a young guy in Sweden. His name's Camille, and he tells me that he's made contact with the owner of this car. And I said, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, I've known about the car. I heard it existed. And he starts sending me photos. And the photos show this purple Diablo, and it's covered in boxes and things, and really looks like, I mean, a garage find is being optimistic. And I'm just like, whoa, this thing is gonna need, you know, probably a lot. Ends up fast forward, you know, he's telling me that this guy has owned it for years. He bought it for nothing. And the Swedish gentleman is telling my contact that there's this crazy US guy that'll pay any amount, well over $1 million, because he knows what he has. He has the prototype SE30. And I laughed and I said, I'm probably that crazy US guy. I said, listen, let's just come up with a number. I really, really want the car. Now, the whole time, the Swedish gentleman is also telling us that he's getting offers from a famous Swedish soccer player. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know the whole scenario there. But back and forth, we finally make a deal. Now, the whole purpose, and I would say the craziest part of this story is, you know, I just assumed, you know, the car is like near Stockholm, like a major city in Sweden. And I called Chip Davis, who's an incredible inspector. I send him, you know, on journeys around the world to find really special cars. And at the end of the day, inspect the cars and make sure the body stamps match and all these different things. So we write up a contract for this Diablo, and I call Chip and I say, hey, you know, I'm going to need you to go to Sweden. Can you inspect it? You know, I'll pay your flight, whatever. I need you to, you know, go through the car. Chip says, great, no worries. So the next day I get a call from Chip and he goes, do you realize where this car is? I'm like, no, it's Sweden. Like, what's the big deal? It's not Sweden. This is in the Arctic Circle. This is like the most northern place of Sweden. He's like, John, forget taking a flight there. I'm going to have to drive like 8 to 14 hours just to get to this place. There's like one flight a week on these little planes. Like, this is not an easy car to get to. So I said, okay, well, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. So Chip ends up going to Sweden. He lands, and it actually takes him like 16 hours by car, 18 hours by car. He gets to this location basically inside the Arctic Circle in Sweden, and there it is. SE30 prototype. Amazingly, all together, the car hasn't been serviced in years. One tire is flat. It is covered in dust. I think the most wild part of this story is you always, in our industry, I am now a massive advocate of having someone else's eyes on a car. Listen, I believe to a certain extent I'm an expert in what I do, but listen, if two experts are looking at something, maybe they'll find something that someone else doesn't. So as Chip is going around the car and he's checking, you know, door numbers and engine numbers and all these different things, he realizes that this is actually two cars. And for a second, I'm like, you know, he's sending me these messages and I'm freaking out. I'm like, what do you mean two cars? And he goes, listen, I think this is another prototype that became this prototype. So as he's researching everything, we discovered a car that we never know existed. And that's actually this car. And what it was when you looked at the door stamps and you looked at the hood stamps. So all SE30s have door stamps. They have a stamp on the hood. They have an engine stamp. They matched from another car. And what that car pulled up was a 1993 XL30, which we believe stood for Extra Light 30. And we're going to be going through all of the documentation with Polo Storico, with the Lamborghini factory. That car in the factory record shows as a lightweight prototype. So XL30, lightweight prototype, originally red. We don't know what it looked like. And that's where I started to go down the rabbit hole of Horacio Pagani. If you look up XL30 and you look up Lamborghini, what comes up is a car called the L30. And that was what was originally supposed to be the 30th anniversary car, which was a car that Pagani had designed for Lamborghini. This car is sort of a point of contention when you think of Lamborghini and you think of Pagani's story. Apparently, Pagani during this time had gone out on his own, and I was lucky enough earlier this year to spend some time with Horacio and interview him about his days with Lamborghini, a company that is near and dear to his heart. We have carbon fiber with Lamborghini in these late 80s and early 90s because of Pagani. But most importantly, what makes this SE30 so special is the use of carbon fiber, is this development of carbon fiber. So Pagani was contracted by Lamborghini while he already had Modena design to build all of the wings, the carbon fiber wings, and the rear hood, and really design these elements of the SE30. The original car, I don't know exactly what would have been come with it, but we actually found, Pagani shared with us the original designs of the rear hood, the original design elements of the rear wing, and all of these cool pieces in carbon. So this car was that original experimental car, and then eventually would become, by the factory, the first SE30 prototype. Super exciting to discover those two things, that combination. And during this process, we learned that much more. We ended up buying the car, we bring the car home, and somehow in the press, it made national Swedish news that Zlatan Ibrahimovic was trying to buy this car, and he was paying millions for it until a gentleman from the US bought the car. Now, I have no idea how this came out. It made a lot of the big papers in Sweden, which was sort of funny because my wife's Swedish. But once we got the car here to Miami, we just started digging and finding out that it was at this auto show and this auto show. And it eventually at one point came to the US, and then it was on the cover of Road and Track. So really this car, sort of like an onion, the more we dug, the more sort of we discovered. Every peel, it was like, wow, we learned this and we learned this. During the process, we learned so many unique facts about this car. As we were detailing it, did a major service. We took off all the carbon fiber. At some point, someone had polished all the carbon fiber. All of the door panels were different. All of the windows were different. So on a normal SE30, only the little roll down window is actually Lexan. On this car, the whole window is Lexan. This car, the whole door panel is different. The door handle is different. When you go into the interior, the AC vents were actually painted blue to match the Alcantara. The gauges were different. The entire center console. It's funny, the adjustable sway bar, which is on all SE30s, is actually phony. It's fake in this car. It's a different design, but it's not attached to anything. It was just for, visual purposes as a prototype. The center console on SE30s normally has a little Alcantara covering. This car is all carbon fiber. And probably the craziest detail that we learned about this car as we were having it detailed was that some of the body parts on the lower side skirts are actually made out of wood, which is not uncommon on prototypes, show cars like that. So today we are almost done with an incredible sort of preservation of this car, getting it prepared for its next owner. I would say in the 10 years of Curated, discovering two prototypes by pure accident, discovering a car in the Arctic Circle, the incredible story of this car and its sort of journey around the world is one of my favorites.
If you get a ticket, the first thing you should do is text a picture of it to 305-305. That will get the ticket clinic on your case immediately. You'll be facing costly fines, risks of suspension, possible jail time, points on your license, higher insurance premiums, and a lot of bad things that they can help you to avoid. You can also find them at the link in the description below, but the Ticket Clinic is a nationwide law firm with brick and mortar offices in Georgia, Florida, and California, but they've got attorneys everywhere, and that's what's most important, because a local attorney will know exactly how the local laws work, know the people who are in charge, and get you the best outcome possible. So text a picture of your ticket to 305-305 or click the link in the description below to fight your ticket with the Ticket Clinic.